What if I told you that 90% of B2B software companies are not measuring the right things when it comes to cold outbound? My name is Alex, and I work with founders who wanted to create a B2B sales motion. I've executed about 60 go to market strategies, generating millions in pipelines in the past 2 years. I'm going to show you exactly the metrics that you should be watching to make sure that you're on track to generate revenue. Before we turn outbound in a predictable sales machine, in this video, I'm using a template that I've used across all the clients, and that template isn't super sophisticated. There's no magic sauce to it, except that I made it very simple. We're tracking just the right thing, and it's yours for the getting for free. So first, let me show you exactly the dashboard I put in place between me and my clients to make sure that we're on track to generating revenue. So here's my exact tracking sheet and how it's organized. This is real data from one of my clients that we are currently running. We're the fourth week in of the first month, right? You can see we already have a pretty steady conversion rate, and they have already a pilot that is looking good toward a sale. So this is like a bit populated, but it's not like a campaign we've been running for months, and it can give you an idea of what starting can look like for you. So first of all, we've got like a part-time SDR. It's Europe, so we're not making the same high volume of calls to get the pickup ratio. So the SDR is making between 130 to 160 calls per week, averaging 150. And last week, he made actually a lot more calls, ramping up all the way to 322 calls. He had around 30 conversations per week, and it just ballooned to 63 plus the last week. And the pickup ratio has been hovering around 22%, give or take, from what I can see from his numbers. And he's booked already 11 meetings just in month one. So the first thing I track is how many calls were made, right? We still want to track input. And I think this is where too many companies put all of the emphasis. They're like, how many calls were made? How many calls were made? Can we make more calls? And that's great, but you can actually get a lot of meetings with very few calls if the rest of your setup is right. So the second thing we want to track is not just how many calls were made, but how many decision makers did you talk to on a weekly basis? The next thing I want to look at is the pickup ratio, which is if I make 100 calls, how many conversations am I going to have on average with decision makers? And here's pretty high, which means we have really good data. But typically, if that ratio is too low, I will tell you in a minute what to do and what to look for. And you've got how many meetings were booked. These should be qualified meetings. We use band criteria, budget, authority, need, timeline. And then last, we want conversion rate. If I talk to 10 decision makers, how many are going to book a meeting? Then weekly, we track how many meetings took place, when did they take place, which company did we meet, what is the deal value, what is the status, and is it qualified or not? So next, I've got the operation log. The operation log is the non-fancy version of having people and conversations being listed. And in this, you can see there's already 112 conversations in just a month with decision makers. And what we're looking for is you got the name of a person, the company you talk to, the role, if it's adopted or not. This is a French campaign, so we've got French excerpts. But here it's a transcription, like a short version of a transcription. We want to understand what are the objections we're getting? What are the outcomes of these calls? We don't want the full transcription because that will be too heavy, but we want to understand where's the messaging maybe missing the mark? Where's the targeting missing the mark? Because we can see from job titles or company names or company industries that maybe we're resonating less somewhere. So we want this kind of audit trail with track records to understand where we stand and how we can improve things. Going back to my numbers, this is now we can relate the conversations to the numbers. We can understand which lever to pull. And basically what I look at is my benchmarks, right? And so these benchmarks are telling me that if I've got somebody calling for 20 hours a week, right? And SDR was part-time, half-time, right? Not 40 hours, but 20 hours. They should be making around 150 to 200 calls per week. And in Europe, we should expect about 10% pickup ratio. If it drops below 10, we need to have a hard look and start to fix it. But that should give me around 20 conversations, right? If I hit 200 calls. And out of these 20 conversations, I'm going to get a certain number of meetings booked. And then if I've got the USA, the number of calls should be higher up because the pickup ratio is lower. On average, it's a third lower than Europe. And so assuming I've got a good phone infrastructure, I'm not marked as spam when I call, I should have around 3%. So if I want to keep a steady 20 conversations that have a fighting chance of 10% conversion ratio to book 2 meetings, then what I need to do is I need to make more calls. Simple as that. So this is where parallel dialer, power dialers can be very useful. Another way to influence this metric is simply to increase the quality of the data we're getting in terms of mobile numbers. And in terms of conversion ratio, 10 to 20% is okay, 20 to 30 is good, and 30 plus is great. And that's where we want to be ultimately at. Your biggest lever is in more calls, it's improving conversion ratio. Going from 20% to 30% means 6 meetings per week instead of 4 without burning out your SDR. So looking at here, I think the color coding is helping us to analyze, but we can see that the pickup ratio is pretty stable and very high even for Europe. And so looking at these numbers and looking at the number of conversations, we immediately understand that data is not the issue. It's not that we get the wrong mobile numbers or that this persona doesn't pick up the phone as much. The input is pretty good. It's on par with the number of conversations we have. We have way above 20 conversations per week. So all of that is like in the green zone. But then we've got 11 meetings that got booked over a month, which is really good. A couple of advices: if you're getting like very low connect and a very low throughput in terms of conversions from conversation to meeting booked, start with the first bottleneck, which is, okay, I'm not reaching decision makers enough. So start by fixing that and then move toward, now that I can reach decision makers, I'm still getting a very low conversion rate. What can it be? Can it be the targeting? Can it be the messaging? Can it be a mix of both? Why are we not getting the quality and the quantity of meetings that we're looking for? The good thing is, if you follow this process that I just showed you, if you follow these key metrics that I showed you, whether it's in your CRM or directly on the copy you have downloaded from the description, what's going to happen is you're going to make data-driven decisions. I've come in a lot of situations where I've been told that people were burnt by agencies before. There was no data, there was no measurement of what was working, what was not working. We don't know if it's targeting, if it's messaging, if it's permutations of both. I just showed you an example where of about week 1, 3 meetings booked, right? And that's a client that was using students to make the cold calls, and they were just not getting anywhere. They also hired an agency. That agency made some calls, they booked some meetings, but the meetings were not qualified, right? The person had no budget. And that's a client that's under a timeline. They want to actually drive deals before end of this year. We're in September now, and we got hired mid-August, and they really want to go for the low-hanging fruits. I've had a client, this is the most extreme case, where we didn't get any qualified meetings turned into pipeline for about 6 months. But then we generated 500K of pipeline in less than 5 months. And they signed the client, and this client was a 300% ROI on our services for a year. You don't need that many deals. You don't need outbound to bring you like tons of deals. You just need 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on your average deal size. Another case that we had was a client in cybersecurity. We generated over 850 grand of pipeline in less than 3 months. Another one was in construction tech. We generated about 62 qualified meetings in less than 3 months. So all of these are like important numbers of what's possible. But we also have the case where there's been 5 meetings and they're all 100 grand worth on average, and client signed 1. Every outbound expert I talk to, they all say you should look at it as a 9 to 12 month journey. And you should be looking at the first month as like this experimentation lab where you're just trying things to see what clicks. And when it clicks, you just scale. That being said, I just did a campaign where we generated, it's a 6-month time to sell, but we've already signed 4 clients. Deals that were cut after a month and a half, after 2 weeks, like some record-breaking deals in terms of time, because we called the decision maker. The thing is, I've seen too many companies just cut the programs like just before it worked, or they're starting to work and they would just eject from it because they just couldn't sustain in their mind the time frame it really takes to be successful. Breaking down the exact ROI math for outbound, how many deals you actually need to make this profitable. Click to watch it now.